All right, I set my jets back in. They were, let me look in the notes, they were 115 lows on each low jet, 137.5 in the rear, 135 in the front. We'll go ahead and tighten them back up. They don't have to be ridiculous tight. They just lightly seat. I got a skinny screwdriver for doing the low jets. I ground it. That's why this screwdriver just basically is done with carburetors. Sometimes you'll find a carburetor or a screwdriver that'll fit better. I do use a different one for the main jet. That way we don't strip them. You lightly just seat them. You don't have to tighten them. Just lightly seat. There's no reason to get them just ridiculous tight. We also went back and we cleaned these up. We lapped these. I put the check valve on. I replaced the screws, and I also replaced this retainer plate because the retainer plates were damaged so bad that they were even missing some of the metal. So we got all the pieces out, cleaned all that up, and it's ready to go on those. We also went back, and what I do is I actually silver solder T-handles on to so that you can adjust them with your fingers. Not all the shops will do that. We do it just because it's a little bit easier. Some of the shops have a tool where you can take and adjust them in between the carbs, you know, like this. Not all the customers have it, so I try and make it easy for them to fine tune them a little bit. So what we'll do, we'll put the rubber seals in here. There. Here. Set these back on. These screws here weren't really bad. We'll lightly touch them with where's that little wire brush at? We'll lightly touch them a little bit just in case there's a little bit of debris on them. Sometimes these will get stripped. If they do, you got to get them out. Once you get them out, basically throw them away, put new ones in. If they're in bad shape, you know, these grabbed my number 2 screwdriver pretty easy. They weren't really tough to get out. They're about 85 cents a piece. They're not really expensive. To go like that. These number 2 works real well on these. Again, you don't have to get these ridiculous tight. You'll feel it seat. One, and come back. And that's seated. You'll just feel the screw just gets tension. And they're only number 4s, so it doesn't take much. The reason I went back and forth is because the rubber gasket kind of gives you a false feeling how tight they get. Next step, what we can do, we'll put the O-rings that were coming in the kit. There's going to be 2 different sizes. One's a little bit bigger. There's not much difference. You almost have to set them next to each other to see. These 2 are just slightly smaller. Put those on the mains. Grab our springs for the main. Actually, excuse me, high speed adjuster. And then it goes spring, washer, O-ring. The low speeds, same thing, it's a little bit bigger. Spring, washer, and O-ring. Spring, washer. And I don't suggest doing this with all the stuff on the table. I'm going to try and lay it out better. Maybe I can do a better video with all the stuff gone and a nice clean table. And the factory settings on the low speed screws, they called for half. It's a little bit lean. You might want to go to 3/4 and see how it idles. You may have to come back to half. It's going to be really close between the 2. So what you do is you screw the screw all the way in. You'll feel it lightly seat. Come out half. 5/8, maybe 3/4. I do it a little bit more, and the reason being is because the gas, again, has changed so much. On the high-speed adjustments, you're gonna have them different. Actually, I gotta look at my notes here. High-speed screw, turns out, let's go backwards. Low-speed screws are turning 3/4, half, 1, half, 3/4. High-speed screws are going to be out of half. I would still put them at 3/4. We'll go back to this high speed. Here. I switched from carb to carb because I had a low here and a high on this side. They are marked next to the carburetor. We're going to go high-speed screw, half turn, put it at 5/8. Also, if you look at the carburetor, on the castings, there's a tiny L right there, and there's an H right there. That'll tell you. Also, if you look at the side of the carburetor, this screw is lower, this screw is higher. High speed's going to be in the rear, low speed's going to be in the front. So, put these adjusters back in.
So explain, if I were riding and I took it off on one, why would I adjust this?
If you have a good idle, but when you hit the throttle, it has a slight hesitation, then you're going to take and richen the low speeds up because it's an idle. And usually what I tell people is wait about 15 to 20 seconds, stab the throttle. That's going to be your time frame that it's run long enough at idle and stabilized your mixture. If you take and just wide open and let off, you're never going to get a true reading. You got to be in that circuit that long. So these were on high speeds about half. There. Get this one in. Next step is going to be pop-off pressure. You've got to put the needles and seats in. Once you put the needles and seats in, the spec sheet calls for 15 gram springs, 1.5 needle and seat. So what you're going to have is a pop-off pressure of 55. What I need to do is I'll get those items set up. The needles and seats are just regular brass needles and seats from Mikuni. They're going to be fairly easy to set up. Package there. Once you pull the needle out, push your seat in, put your retainer clips, screws, everything on, and then we'll get back to that. I'll give you adjustments. All right, this is the float arm. What I found is over the time, some of these parts, when they're pressed out, they're not real tight, they're not real precise. So what I've been doing is I put the pin in and kind of take needle nose and just walk it around the pin just to make sure it's nice and tight, just like it would have been brand new 25 years ago. Set that one like that. Same thing with this one. And I would recommend that you use the new float arms and the new pins that hold the float arms because they do wear. They'll have a head, they won't be right. They'll have a little detent in them or something where it doesn't want to take and get pop open at the right pop off pressure or something like that. These I put the needles in seat, or I put the seats in. These arms or these retainers were so corroded. We'll need to clean them. I'm going to replace the screws. Basically just hold them in your fingers, get them kind of cleaned up. I'm going to replace them with stainless steel screws. It's just not worth fighting these non-stainless screws. Let me get these cleaned up. I'll put the screws in the carburetors. So I cleaned the little retainer plates. Got those. New screws. Extra retainer plates already in. And that's that there. Have your needles, put them back in like that. Then 115 gram springs is where your starting point is. Take your float arms. There's a little retainer at the top of the needle. You'll tuck the arm under it so it holds it. You go under the spring. There's a detent on the spring. That spring needs to be in the center of that. The screws, you'll want to seat the spring down like this so it's right. Then put the screw in so you don't have anything in a bind. That's slightly low, so what you're going to want to do is come back on the float arm on the back side. This is below the casting, so what you do is you come back, lift the arm a little bit more. And the video won't show it, but the bottom side of the float arm will be level with the casting here. There's no way you're going to see that without being here in person. That's impossible. So there. See, like that spring flipped out, not under the arm. So you got to see the right.